Why was everyone laughing when she hadn't even spoken? The joke wasn't hers, but it landed like shrapnel all the same. Listen, grease monkey, if you ever touch a real stick, I'll personally call the medics. The words cracked like a whip across the scorching Nevada tarmac. Brutal laughter followed, the kind that doesn't let you breathe. It mixed with the thunder of jet engines, filling the flight line with something heavier than heat. Staff Sergeant lay half buried beneath the belly of an F-16 Fighting Falcon. Her wrench turned steady, muscles taut beneath streaks of oil and sweat. She didn't look up. She never did. Let them laugh. Let them mock the dream she carried like contraband in her chest. This was her battlefield, bolts, actuators, wiring runs that responded only to precision. She didn't need their approval. She needed to keep these machines alive. Still, every insult had weight. Hangar rat, dream pilot. A call sign fit only for polishing cockpits, never flying them. They didn't know. They couldn't. The next voice cleared from the tower would belong to her one day. Not today, not yet. But when it came, it would save lives and obliterate every unspoken rule. The sun beat down mercilessly, cooking the tarmac into a shimmering mirage. Heat rose in waves, distorting the lined-up Falcons until they looked like illusions ready to vanish. The flight line reeked of jet fuel and superheated metal, a cocktail that clung to her skin. Across the hangar's shade, a semicircle of pilots lounged like predators at rest. Captain, tall, smug, and always the first to bet against her, tapped a soda can against his thigh. All right, bets on the table. A month's pay says never hears her call sign on tower comms, not unless it's to fetch coffee. The chuckles that followed were thin, sharp, and final, like a verdict. No one defended her. Not one voice rose. Kept her head down. The wrench turned another quarter rotation. Metal clicked into place, obedient to her steady torque. That was the difference. Machines respected discipline. Men like only respected rank. She had neither, but she had persistence. The sound of polished boots on gravel cut through the noise. Colonel stepped into view, his shadow long and unyielding. Early 50s, uniform crisp enough to slice air, eyes that measured everything in terms of worth. Worth to the mission, worth to the Air Force, worth to him. Slid out from under the aircraft, snapping to attention despite the sweat streaking her temple. She didn't blink, not when his gaze settled on her. And you are. His tone was flat, as if reading a parts list. Staff Sergeant, sir. He let the silence hang. Too long, too heavy. Finally, why is someone like you working on critical systems for an F-16? This isn't a motorcycle repair bay. Her jaw tightened, but her voice was even. I'm lead technician on this airframe, running a post-flight check on a flap actuator system. Something in his gaze shifted, not softer but sharper. He stepped closer, eyes landing on the black book sitting in her toolbox. Without asking, he picked it up, flipped it open. A diary, no, not a diary, her flight log. Civilian hours scrawled in careful ink. Dawn lessons paid for with doubled shifts. Numbers climbing toward certification. A life's dream written in entries only she believed in. Snap the book shut. Mechanics have no business pretending to be pilots. His voice cut like steel. He tucked the logbook under his arm like a captured flag. This stays with me. Get back to work. Her hand twitched, an instinct to reach for what was hers, but she froze. You don't reach for rank. You don't reach for something they can destroy. She swallowed hard and slid back beneath the Falcon. Her wrench turned again, steady, precise. But inside, a fissure opened. The sabotage began almost immediately. Tools gone missing from her kit, then mysteriously reappearing hours later behind equipment. Maintenance reports vanished from digital logs. Grit poured into her water bottle. Every act carried the same quiet message. You don't belong. By the second week, she'd become a warning sign. New looked at her like she was cursed, like standing near her would stain their own careers. She ate alone, worked alone, walked the perimeter fence at night, the F-16s gleaming like unreachable stars under floodlights. It would have broken someone else. Maybe it was breaking her too. But every night she stared at the planes and whispered to herself, one day they'll hear me on comms. The morning came like a blade of light, leaned against the hangar's frame, wiping grease from her hands, watching the line. Then she heard it. The sound was small, almost unnoticeable, a metallic clack, sharp, wrong, familiar. Her head snapped toward Fighting Falcon 415. A young pilot rushed through his checklist, careless hands moving too fast. When he tested the actuator, the sound carried across the tarmac. She knew that sound. It was the cry of a fatigued part pushed beyond tolerance. Her rag fell, she strode forward. "Captain," she called, voice low but firm. "Hold up. That actuator isn't right. I need to take another look." The pilot frowned down at her. "It's fine, Sergeant. I followed procedure." "I heard it pop under load. That's not normal." His jaw set. "With respect, Sergeant, you're not cleared to reinspect my bird. I have a launch window." Her voice sharpened. "If that part fails mid-flight, you won't have to worry about your launch window." "What's going on here?" The shadow returned, Colonel, tone already laced with judgment. "Nothing, sir," the pilot answered quickly. "Just about to taxi." His chest tightened. "Sir, I believe there's a defect in the flap actuator. I request clearance to." "Enough," his hand sliced the air. "You have your assignment. Return to your post." Her protest caught in her throat. Rank silence truth. She stepped back, fists clenched, as Falcon 415 taxied out. Sunlight flashed off its canopy. The afterburners roared, ripping dust into the sky as the jet vanished into the horizon. She told herself it was over. She told herself she'd tried. But as the hours passed, something changed in the tower. The rhythm of updates faltered. Then a clipped, broken voice cut through the comms. "Eagle-7, confirm status." Static silence, then fragments. "Flap control, negative response, primary comms." Froze. Eagle-7. That was Falcon 415. That was the actuator she tried to stop. Her legs carried her before her mind caught up. She ran, toolkit slamming against her hip, boots pounding asphalt. She hit the control tower's service door, flashed her keys, slipped through corridors until she reached the communications bay. One glance told her everything. The backup array flickered like a dying heartbeat. A black lead mise seated, copper shielding scorched from arcing against the frame. Someone hadn't checked, or maybe they had. Maybe sabotage had followed her here too. "Kill power to the backup module," she snapped at the tech. "That'll cut the last link to Eagle-7. "It's already dead. Give me 30 seconds. Her hands blurred, strip cable, reseat lead. Burned copper out, fresh copper in. Sparks kissed her wrist, but she didn't flinch. "Restore power." The module spun up with a low whine. Dead air hissed, then shifted. A human voice broke through. "In tower, this is Eagle-7. Fuel critical, approach unstable." Her chest lifted with the sound. He was alive. For now. She closed her kit, grabbed a headset, and pushed through the glass door into the tower cabin. Colonel turned, eyes wide. "Staff Sergeant, you're out of line." "I reconnected your backup channel," she cut in, voice steady. "You've got partial comms. You are not authorized to. You want him down alive or not?" The room went silent. His mouth tightened, but he didn't stop her. She slipped on the headset, her voice dropping into calm clarity. "Eagle-7, this is Thunderbolt Tower. I have you on partial. Do you copy?" A ragged breath. "Tower read you, controls compromised, fuel low." "This is Staff Sergeant. I've worked on your bird. You've got a flap actuator failure, primary hydraulics dead. I'm going to walk you through the manual override." Step by step, her voice guided him. Red lever, auxiliary release, 3-second hold, incremental throttle, secondary runway, cable. The F-16 came in hot, nose pitched high, engine screaming in protest. At 100 meters, the tail hook dropped. The cable snapped taut with a whip crack. The jet shuddered, screamed, then bled out its momentum in violent tremors. Silence, then the tower erupted in applause. Removed the headset, her heart beat loud in her ears. Without a word, she turned toward the stairwell. No one stopped her. Why did silence feel heavier than the applause she'd left behind? The stairwell echoed with every step of her boots, kept her eyes down, her jaw tight, refusing to let the tremor in her chest show. She should have felt triumph, relief, validation. She pulled a pilot back from death. But all she felt was the thrum of adrenaline bleeding out into emptiness. She hadn't been allowed to act, she'd acted anyway. And when the headset came off, nothing had changed. She was still just a sergeant walking out the back door, logbook confiscated, reputation in tatters. Or so she thought. That night the debrief gathered every officer and pilot into the briefing hall. Stood in the far back, oil-stained uniform stark against their crisp blues. She didn't expect her name to be spoken. She expected to be invisible. But Captain Martinez, the one she'd guided down, stood tall before the crowd. His face was pale, jaw still tight from the memory of failure. Yet his voice didn't shake when he said, "Eagle-7 went up for training. Midway through, I lost flap control. I lost comms. I was out of fuel. I was out of options. Then someone came on the channel. Staff sergeant. She knew my bird well enough to walk me through a manual override I'd never even trained on. I'm standing here because of her." Murmurs rippled across the room. Martinez let the weight of it settle before continuing. "I've put in a formal recommendation for the Air Force Commendation Medal and for Sergeant's immediate entry into officer training." The room stilled. It was the kind of silence that meant history had just bent a degree. Eyes turned toward her, some grudging, some wide with disbelief. And one pair, the colonel's, narrowed. His jaw clenched, but he said nothing. For the moment was unreal. She lived so long under the shadow of being unseen that recognition felt foreign, almost dangerous. Pride pressed against her ribs, but fear clamped down harder. Recognition was a double-edged weapon. It could cut her free, or it could cut her down. Later, in the dim light of her quarters, a knock came. She opened the door to find himself, logbook in hand. He held it out, not with warmth but with formality. "Staff Sergeant," he said, voice low, "I was wrong, my judgment was flawed." A pause, hard swallow. "You'll report to the training office at 800. Then he left, no apology, no smile, just duty. Stared at the logbook in her hands. The leather was worn, the inked numbers smudged by years of sweat and stubbornness. She ran her thumb along its spine and felt something she hadn't in months, hope pressing against the cracks of doubt. The next morning, the training field greeted her with brutal indifference. No polished hangars here, just scorched asphalt runways, prefab classrooms rattling in the wind, and a skeletal control tower looming like a judge. Everything about it said, "If you don't belong, you'll break." She stood in a fresh flight suit, logbook clipped to her board. Around her, candidates gathered, almost all younger, taller, louder. Some glanced at her with curiosity, others with suspicion. She was an outsider in every sense, not bred for this path, not molded in the same academies, just a mechanic who refused to stay in the hangar. The first drill hit hard. Takeoff and pattern flight in the T-38 trainer. Simple, they called it. Precision, they meant. Halfway through her final turn, the instructor's voice cut in, sharp and cold. "Engine failure, respond." Her hands moved without hesitation. Throttle back, rudder compensate, trim adjustment, the frame steadied. She dropped altitude, measured the runway, 800 feet. Touchdown firm but centered. Rollout left her with 100 feet to spare. Silence in the headset, then grudgingly, "Not bad, Sergeant." Not bad, for it was oxygen. The weeks unfolded in relentless rhythm. Early mornings blurred into long drills, aircraft formations, live fire simulations, emergency responses. Each test designed not just to measure skill but to strip confidence bare. And each time she staggered, a voice whispered, "You don't belong." It was laugh, scorn, every sabotage that told her she was only grease under nails. But when the doubt clawed at her chest, she turned to the logbook. Each inked flight hour was proof. Proof she had already climbed. Proof she wasn't pretending. Proof she was building toward this moment long before the Air Force ever acknowledged her. By the third week, team drills began. 4 aircraft formations, rolling in coordinated sweeps. When lead took a simulated hit, chaos erupted in the sky. Her instinct was faster than thought. She rolled into position, lined up the target, and fired within the narrow window. The debrief was curt. You don't wait for orders, you act. Sometimes that saves lives, sometimes it ends them. She nodded, taking the sting without defense. They didn't understand. Waiting had cost her too much already. The final evaluation loomed like a storm. A modified test platform with unfamiliar controls. Mid-flight alarms screamed. Actuator signal loss. Systems glitching. The old nightmare back again, this time in her hands. Her pulse spiked, but she forced her breath steady. Diagnostics. Isolate the fault. Adjust inputs manually. Ride the turbulence, don't fight it. By landing, the system had stabilized under her hands. When her boots touched the runway, she knew she hadn't just passed, she had earned. That afternoon, sat at a bare table, insignia box resting before him. His gaze was steady, unreadable, but no longer dismissive. "Staff Sergeant," he said, voice formal, "welcome to the Officer Corps." She didn't flinch as he slid the box across the table. She opened it, fingers brushing the silver bars. They were small, simple, but their weight was immeasurable. The ceremony was brief, functional. On the flight line, with an F-35 climbing overhead, Martinez pinned the bars to her collar. His voice was low just for her. "Lieutenant, you've got lead next month in the joint exercise. Don't make me regret it." His lips curved into the smallest smile. "Wouldn't dream of it, Captain." That night she walked to the far end of the runway, where sodium lights bled into desert darkness. Stars spilled across the sky, each one distant, unreachable, yet burning all the same. She thought of her first day, of the weight of stairs, the cuts designed to push her out. Every choice since had been a brick laid in a path only she could see. Now the path stretched forward, beyond the edge of the airfield, into the sky itself. The wind carried the distant rumble of another sortie launching. She closed her eyes, letting the sound fill her chest. For the first time, it didn't feel like something beyond her reach. It felt like a call. And she was ready to answer. Why did the bars on her collar feel heavier than the aircraft she was about to command? The silver insignia caught the early desert light, gleaming with an authority wasn't sure she had earned. Everyone else seemed certain she hadn't. She heard it in the way the other pilots spoke, just loud enough for her to catch. Mechanic with a borrowed flight suit. Fast-tracked through pity. Martinez must have pulled strings. Ignored the whispers. At least she tried. But the truth was they burrowed deep. She worked for every hour in her logbook, every scar on her hands. Still, one thought nagged her as she walked the flight line that morning. What if they were right? The joint exercise loomed. 4 aircraft, mixed crews, simulated strike runs. She'd been assigned lead, a position that demanded not just skill but trust. Trust she hadn't yet earned. Trust they didn't want to give. Captain was among her wingmen, and the smirk on his face told her everything. He would follow protocol, but he wouldn't follow her. Not willingly. Not unless she proved herself in a way that couldn't be ignored. The briefing was sharp, clinical. Objectives, routes, engagement rules. When it ended, leaned just close enough to murmur, "Don't freeze up, Lieutenant. Some of us plan on coming back in one piece." Didn't answer. She just adjusted her helmet strap, checked her notes one last time, and walked out to the tarmac. Her heart pounded, but her hands stayed steady. The F-16 waited, canopy glinting like a challenge. Engines thundered to life. One by one they taxied, then lifted off in formation. The desert dropped away beneath them, the horizon stretching endless and bright. For a moment the climb was clean, smooth, almost beautiful. Then came the test. Halfway to target range, simulated radar lit up the HUD. Red icons, enemy aircraft closing fast. Her voice came calm over comms. Viper formation, Titan spread, defensive posture. Copy lead, Martinez answered from her right. Reliable, steady. She could count on him. His voice came next, dripping with skepticism. Defensive already, we've barely cleared ingress. Swallowed the retort, burning her tongue. She couldn't lead with ego. That's an order, Captain. Defensive spread, now. A pause, then grudging compliance. The red icon split, flanking wide. A classic trap. Her mind raced, recalling countless hours studying tactics alone in dim barracks while others slept. She keyed comms. 2, break left. 3, right. 4, stay on me. Engines roared as the formation split, countering the maneuver. Rolled her jet, lining up the first bogey in her sights. Her breathing slowed, narrowed, until all that existed was target, reticle, trigger. She fired. Splash 1, the controller's voice confirmed. Martinez scored next, splash 2. But lagged, late on his roll. An enemy icon closed on him fast. Didn't think she moved. Banking hard, she cut across angles, locked onto the trailing bogey and fired. Another splash. 6 was clear. Silence on comms for a beat. Then's voice quieter now. Copy, thanks lead. The battle raged another 10 minutes, but the tide had turned. When the exercise ended, their formation was intact. Mission accomplished. Back on the tarmac, helmets off, sweat-soaking flight suits, waited for the verdict. The debrief officer's voice was flat. Lead demonstrated quick adaptation. Team cohesion improved under pressure. Objective achieved with minimal errors. It was faint praise, but it was enough. Enough to silence the whispers for now. Enough to make avoid her eyes instead of sneering. That night sat alone at the edge of the runway again. Stars spread above her like an unreachable ceiling. The doubts still whispered, but softer now. She thought of Martinez's steady voice, of his reluctant thanks, of the way her hands hadn't shaken when it mattered most. Maybe she was earning this after all. But the Air Force had a way of testing belief, the moment it began to solidify. 2 weeks later, orders shifted. A new joint operation overseas. Not a drill this time. Real deployment, real risks. His name was on the roster. The night before departure summoned her. His office was bare, functional, the kind of space where sentiment had no place. He studied her a long moment before speaking. "Lieutenant," he said, voice level, "you've surprised me. I don't give compliments lightly, but you've proven yourself in ways I didn't expect." He leaned forward. "But understand this. The field isn't a classroom. Out there, hesitation kills. Mistakes bury teams. I need to know when the moment comes, will you act?" Her throat tightened, not because she doubted the answer, but because she knew the weight of it. She met his eyes. "Yes, sir, I will act." He studied her another beat, then nodded once. "Then let's see if you can fly beyond the runway lights." When she left his office, the desert air felt colder than usual. The stars above seemed sharper, more distant. She knew what lay ahead wasn't just about proving herself anymore. It was about survival, hers, and the people who would now depend on her voice. She whispered into the darkness, as if speaking to the planes waiting in silence. "Don't let me fail them." The engines of deployment already rumbled in the distance. And the sky, once a dream, was about to become a battlefield. Why did the desert overseas feel heavier than the desert at home? The Nevada heat had been merciless, but this was different. The air here clung to skin, thick with dust and tension. Foreign soil, unfamiliar sky. Stood on the forward operating airstrip, helmet under her arm, listening to the layered sounds. Rotors from helicopters at the far pad, distant artillery rumbling beyond the horizon, radios spitting clipped orders. This wasn't training anymore. She glanced at her crew assembling near the Falcons. Martinez was there, steady as always, the anchor she trusted. 2, mask of professionalism hiding the flicker of unease in his eyes. 2 others filled out the formation. Lieutenant, fresh from school, and Major, older, seasoned, carrying the weight of too many tour. She was the youngest in rank, the in the sky, yet the lead call sign was hers. The mission was simple on paper: provide overwatch for a convoy threading its way through a canyon network. Intelligence warned of possible ambush. Their job: eyes in the sky, ready to strike if the trap snapped shut. Convoy departs in 10, the ground controller called. Pulled her helmet on, heart pounding in her chest. She climbed into the cockpit, the seat swallowing her whole. Fingers ran checklists with practiced calm. Systems blinked green. She breathed deep, steadying herself. Thunderbolt formation cleared for takeoff, came the tower's voice. Engines roared. One by one the falcons lifted, the desert shrinking beneath them. The sky stretched wide, endless, both terrifying and liberating. His voice carried steady over comms. Thunderbolt check in. 2 green, Martinez. 3 green. 4 green. 5 green. She nodded, unseen but felt. Maintain formation, eyes sharp. The convoy below moved like a thin scar across the desert floor. Trucks rumbling, dust rising. For a while it was uneventful, almost too quiet. Then the first explosion hit. A thunderous bloom of fire swallowed the lead vehicle, shockwave rippling even up to their altitude. Radio chatter spiked, shouts, confusion. Ambush, ambush. Her eyes locked on movement along the canyon ridges. Heat signatures, multiple, too many. Thunderbolt, we've got hostiles, engage. Engine screamed as the formation split, rolled her Falcon into a dive, HUD locking on targets. She fired. The first strike lit the ridge in flame. Martinez followed, precise and controlled, clearing a second nest. Hesitated. She saw it, his vector off, his lock delayed. The hesitation had warned her about. 3, you're late, she snapped. Reacquire now. Static crackled, then his voice tight. Copy. But it was who broke formation. Too eager, too green. He banked hard, chasing a target low along the canyon, too low. 4, pull up, ordered, urgency sharpening her tone. That's too tight. The warning came too late. Jet clipped a ridge. Metal screamed, flames erupted, and in seconds the Falcon was gone. Her breath caught, silence filled the comms. 4's down, his voice said, calm but heavy. His chest clenched, but the battle raged on. She forced her focus forward. Maintain overwatch, protect that convoy. The fight dragged minutes that felt like hours. One by one, the ambush positions were silenced. Convoy pushed through, battered but moving. Finally, ground command called all clear. Only then did let herself breathe. Only then did she feel the weight of what had just happened. Back on the airstrip, silence followed the landing. Pilots climbed from their cockpits, sweat-soaked, eyes shadowed. Looked at her, guilt carved into his expression. Martinez gave a nod, quiet support without words. Simply walked past, face unreadable. Lingered by her jet, helmet still in hand, staring at the runway. Her first mission, her first lead, and already a man was gone. That night the debrief was brutal. Loss was dissected frame by frame. Too aggressive, the evaluators said. Failed to heed orders. The blame was his, officially. But carried it differently. Orders only mattered if they were followed. And if they weren't, what did that say about her command? Alone in her tent, she opened her logbook. The inked hours looked smaller now, fragile against the weight of reality. She pressed her pen to the page, but her hand shook. For the first time, she wondered if this dream was worth its cost. Martinez found her there, shoulders hunched, eyes shadowed by the glow of a lantern. He didn't knock, didn't ask, just stood in the doorway until she looked up. "You did what you could," he said quietly. "Did I?" Her voice cracked, softer than she meant. "He followed me into the sky. He didn't come back." Martinez stepped closer. His face was tired, lined by the same grief she felt. "You gave the right order. He didn't listen. That doesn't make it your fault." Her gaze dropped. Then why does it feel like it is? Because leadership was never clean. Because survival always had a price. Because the weight of another's life didn't care about fault, it only cared about who carried it. She closed the logbook, fingers trembling against its spine. I thought the hardest part was proving I belonged here. I was wrong. The hardest part is keeping them alive once I do. Martinez didn't argue. He just nodded as if to say welcome to command. The desert outside was quiet that night, but new silence was never permanent. Another mission waited, another test, and now every decision she made would carry the ghost of last dive. She whispered to the darkness, not sure if it was a prayer or a promise. Next time I won't lose anyone. But the desert had its own way of answering. The wind shifted, carrying distant echoes of gunfire. And the sky above, endless and merciless, seemed to ask, "Are you ready to pay what it takes?" Why did the airstrip feel quieter with one plane missing? Stood at the edge of the runway, watching the sun bleed into the horizon. 4 jets sat in formation, not 5. One hangar bay was empty, tools still scattered from the maintenance crew that hadn't had a jet to service. The absence was louder than the roar of engines. His name hadn't been carved into stone yet, but it was carved into her chest. Every time she walked the tarmac, she felt the gap like a wound that wouldn't close. The base carried on as bases always do. Orders didn't pause for grief. The convoy had made it through. Command called the mission a success. Loss was written into the report as pilot error, official, clean, sanitized. But for it wasn't clean, not at all. She'd given the order. She'd seen the angle. She'd known he wouldn't clear the ridge. And still, she hadn't found the words that would cut through his eagerness fast enough. That failure clung to her, heavier than her new bars. In the mess hall, silence followed her in. Pilots glanced her way, some with sympathy, others with calculation, avoided her eyes altogether. Martinez gave her a nod, small but steady, as if to remind her she wasn't alone. Older and weathered, studied her too long before looking away. Every glance carried a question. Was she ready to lead again? That night summoned her. His office was dim, maps and reports scattered across the desk. He didn't look up immediately, forcing her to stand at attention in silence. Finally, he spoke. "Lieutenant, do you know why you're still in that seat?" Her throat tightened. "Because you haven't pulled me from it, sir." His eyes flicked up, sharp. "Because failure is part of command. You don't measure a leader by whether they lose people. You measure them by whether they learn." He leaned forward. "So tell me, what did you learn?" Her chest ached. The words came slow, raw. "That skill isn't enough. Orders aren't enough. If they don't trust me, they won't follow me. And if they won't follow me, they die." Studied her, then gave the smallest nod. "Then learn faster, because another mission's already on the board." She left his office with the words hammering in her head. Learn faster. The briefing the next morning was brutal. A supply convoy trapped in a valley. Enemy mortar teams pinning them down. Their jets tasked with clearing the high ground and opening a path. High risk, low margin for error. When the pilots gathered, the tension was thick. Leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, eyes flicking toward her. Martinez sat upright, pen in hand, steady as always. Watched in silence, expression unreadable. Stood at the front, notes in hand, voice even though her pulse raced. "We go in pairs. Martinez on my wing with suppression first, precision second. We keep altitude staggered, no hero dives. Copy." Smirk returned, faint but sharp. "Understood, Lieutenant, just don't freeze up on us." The words stung, but she didn't flinch. "I don't freeze, Captain, I lead, and I expect you to follow orders this time." The silence that followed was heavy. Martinez's eyes flicked between them, steady but watchful. Finally spoke, voice gravel low. "Orders save lives. Bury your pride, both of you." Didn't answer, but he didn't argue either. Hours later, engines screamed into life. The Falcons lifted, formation slicing into the sky. Below, the valley stretched like an open wound. Smoke rose from trapped vehicles. Mortar flashes lit the ridges. His voice cut through comms, calm, sharp. Thunderbolt split by pairs. Martinez on me. Cover. The first pass came fast. She and Martinez rolled in, weapons locked, strikes tearing through mortar nests. Explosions rippled across the ridge. Targets hit. Ridge 1 neutralized, Martinez confirmed. His voice followed, calm but strained. Ridge 2 suppressed, finish it. Static, then copy, engaging. But his vector drifted. Too wide, too late. The mortar team fired again. A round slammed into the convoy below, fireball erupting from a transport truck. His gut twisted, she keyed comms. 3 correct, now you're off course. Working it, his voice was clipped, defensive. Not fast enough. Her eyes flicked across the HUD. No time, no margin. She cut her throttle, rolled hard and dropped in low. Lock, fire. The ridge exploded under her strike. Target down, the controller confirmed. The convoy below surged forward, breaking free of the kill zone. Mission clear. But when the formation regrouped, the silence was thick. Pride had taken another hit, and everyone knew it. Back on the tarmac, helmets off, sweat running, rounded on her. His voice was low, tight with anger. You undercut me up there. She met his glare without flinching. I saved the convoy. You made me look incompetent. You did that yourself, she said, sharper than she intended. Martinez stepped between them, voice firm. Enough. This isn't about ego, it's about survival. His jaw worked, but he turned away, fists clenched. Lingered, eyes on. For the first time he spoke her name without rank. You've got instincts, good ones, but instincts burn out if you let guilt eat them alive. It's gone, that's on him. Don't carry it so hard you break before the next mission. She nodded, throat tight. Understood, sir. That night she sat at the edge of the runway again, stars sharp above her, the sound of sorties echoing across the desert. She opened her logbook, staring at the inked pages. For the first time, she wrote not just flight hours but words. Lost but not forgotten. Her hands shook, but she kept writing. I will not waste the cost of your mistake. I will lead better, stronger, clearer for you, for all of them. When she closed the logbook, the ache in her chest hadn't vanished, but it felt steadier, sharper, like a wound knitting into scar. Tomorrow there would be another mission, another test, another chance to prove she wasn't just a mechanic in a borrowed suit. She whispered into the desert night, voice steady now, I belong here, and I will not fail them again. The wind carried the words away, but she believed them. For the first time since fall, she believed them. Why did the briefing room feel colder than the desert outside? The map on the wall showed a web of red circles, enemy emplacements strung across a narrow valley like a trap waiting to spring. A supply column was scheduled to move through at dawn. Without air cover, they'd be slaughtered. With it, there was still risk. Too many guns, too many variables. Sat at the table, helmet resting on her lap, eyes scanning the map. The mission was dangerous, no question, but it was the first time Command had assigned her team lead for an operation this size. Not just overwatch, full suppression. The burden pressed against her ribs, heavier than the bars on her collar. His voice carried across the room, sharp as always. This mission will test you. Enemy air defense is thicker than anything you've flown against. If you don't move as one, you won't come back as one. This is your operation. You want to be a leader, prove it. Every gaze turned to her. Martinez is steady, unreadable, narrowed, skeptical, as if waiting for her to falter. She spoke anyway, clear, controlled. We'll stagger altitude, rotate suppression, and cut their fields in layers. No hero dives, no lone wolves. We win as a formation or we don't win at all. Leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. Sounds neat on paper. Let's see if you can hold it together when the sky starts lighting up. Ignored him. She couldn't waste breath on pride, not now. The next morning the Falcons roared off the strip, 4 shadows cutting across the pale sky. The desert opened beneath them, vast and merciless. Thunderbolt check. 2 green, Martinez. 3 green. 4 green. She breathed deep, copy all eyes sharp, we're going in hot. The valley rose ahead, jagged ridges with dug-in positions. Radar lit up in angry waves. Lock warning screamed across the HUD. Missile launch, barked. Evasive, snapped. The formation scattered, jets rolling and diving as contrails streaked upward like hunting spears. Falcon bucked hard as she dumped flares, missile smoke curving wide before detonating in midair. Her stomach pressed into her spine, but her hands stayed steady. Regroup, stay tight, she ordered, voice calm despite her pulse hammering. They rolled back in. Martinez struck first, precision bombs tearing through a battery, followed guns shredding another nest. 2 targets down, Martinez confirmed. But hesitated again. His vector was late, too cautious. Saw it unfolding, the same delay, the same space for disaster. Enemy tracers lit the sky, stitching dangerously close. 3 push now, she barked. Static, then his voice tense. It's too hot, I don't have the angle. Her blood surged, no time to argue, then I'll take it. She rolled her Falcon, diving straight through the wall of tracers. The cockpit shook, alarms shrieking, but her eyes locked on the ridge. Reticle steady, trigger squeezed. Impact, the position erupted, fire licking skyward. Target down, she reported, breath ragged. Silence on comms, then dry as gravel, hell of a risk, Lieutenant. Steadied her voice, risk calculated, mission continues. The formation pressed on, carving through layer after layer of defenses. By the end, the valley burned. The convoy below rolled forward alive. When they regrouped, the silence carried weight. His voice finally broke it, quieter than before. Copy lead, good call. It wasn't an apology, but it wasn't defiance either. Back on the tarmac, the debrief was clinical. Mission successful. High risk managed well. Losses, none. Command noted the precision, the coordination. Even gave the faintest nod of approval as she left the room. But it was the quiet after that stuck with her. Caught her outside, helmet in hand, expression stripped of arrogance. For once he didn't smirk. You shouldn't have made that dive, he said. She met his eyes. You shouldn't have hesitated. A beat passed, then softer, almost reluctant. You saved the mission and maybe my life. The words hit harder than the dive had. She didn't answer, just gave a small nod and walked away. That night returned to the far end of the runway, the place where the stars felt closest. She opened her logbook, pen scratching across paper. Trust is heavier than steel, harder to earn than flight hours, easier to lose than breath. She paused, staring at the words. The mission had proved her, to maybe even to herself. But the sky wasn't done testing her. Orders came the next day. A new mission, higher stakes, a trapped team in hostile terrain, air cover stretched thin, and this time her formation wouldn't just be flying into fire, they'd be flying against the clock. She closed the logbook, heart steady now. The laughter from Nevada felt far away, like an echo from another life. They had once said her call sign was a joke. Now when the tower called Eagle-7, cleared for launch, every pilot on the line knew what it meant. Not just a mechanic, not just a survivor. A leader. But the sky was vast, and mercy was rare. And tomorrow it would test her all over again. Why did the clock feel louder than the engines? The briefing was short, stripped of anything unnecessary. A ground team had been pinned in hostile terrain, their convoy shredded in an ambush. Survivors were holed up in a ruined compound under steady fire, ammunition low, casualties mounting. They needed air cover, and they needed it now. Formation was the only one within range. 4 jets against a hillside crawling with hostiles. The rescue choppers were already en route, but they couldn't get close without suppression. "This is yours," said voice iron. "But hear me. Those men won't last an hour. You don't have margin. Get them out or don't bother coming back." The weight of it pressed hard but only nodded. Understood. Minutes later, the falcons were screaming into the night, afterburners streaking fire across the sky. His chest rose and fell in sharp rhythm beneath her flight suit, but her hands were steady on the stick. "Thunderbolt check." "2 green, Martinez." "3 green," his voice taut but solid. "4 green." She breathed once deep. "Copy all. We're the line between life and death tonight. Fly tight, fly clean." The target zone came into view, a jagged valley, shadows alive with muzzle flashes. The compound below was little more than rubble, but tracer fire raked it relentlessly. A frantic voice cracked over ground comms. "This is Falcon Team. We're pinned. Ammunition nearly gone. If air doesn't hit soon, we won't hold." "Keyed in. Falcon Team, this is Eagle-7. We've got eyes on. Hold your position, we're clearing you a path." Her HUD bloomed red with targets, too many, but hesitation was death. 2 right flank, 3 left ridge, 4 with me, suppress and hold. Engines roared as the formation split. Rolled her jet, locked a gun run and unleashed fire across the hillside. Explosions ripped through entrenched positions, silhouettes scattering. Martinez's bombs lit the ridge, shockwaves rocking the valley. Cut deep, shredding mortar nests with surgical precision. But's voice spiked tense. "Too much fire on my side, I can't break through." Her pulse surged. 3 stay steady, cover him. Tracer fire stitched dangerously close to his jet. For a heartbeat, saw it happening again. The hesitation, the drift, the kill shot lining up. But's guns cut the threat apart. "Clear, move." His voice came back breathless. "Copy." The ground below lit like a storm. Enemy forces regrouped, launching volleys of RPGs toward the compound. One struck close, the blast swallowing part of the wall. His gut clenched, ground comm screamed, "We've lost 2, we can't hold." She keyed in, voice sharp, "Chopper's status." 2 minutes out, came the strained reply. 2 minutes, an eternity under fire. Her eyes scanned the ridges, locking onto a cluster of heavy guns. If they weren't silenced, the choppers wouldn't survive approach. She didn't think. She couldn't. 3-4 hold suppression. "Martinez on my wing, we're diving." "Too hot," Martinez warned. "That's suicide." "Not if we're precise." She banked hard, engines howling, dragging Martinez with her. The HUD screamed lock warnings, tracers clawing skyward, but her focus narrowed. Reticle, target, trigger. Impact. The hillside erupted in fire, gun nests torn apart. Martinez struck the second cluster, explosions cascading. "Targets down," called, breath ragged. "Choppers inbound," came the controller's voice. "ETA 1 minute." The valley shook as enemy forces surged for one last push. Streams of tracer fire arced toward the compound. Rolled again, heart pounding, guns chattering until the barrels glowed. "Hold them," she shouted, voice raw. Engines thundered low, the rescue birds slicing through the sky, rotors hammering. They dipped into the valley, doors flung open, suppressive fire raining, and her formation blanketed the ridges, clearing every angle they could. One by one, battered survivors scrambled aboard the choppers. Falcon Team loading 30 seconds, ground comms crackled. "Thunderbolt, cover them." Every gun in the valley turned on the birds. HUD screamed red, "Too many, too fast." 3 break right with him, she snapped. "Martinez with me, cut them down." Engines screamed. Missiles streaked. Explosions lit the valley. Jets shook under recoil, but she held the trigger until the hillside tore apart. "Falcon Team loaded," came the desperate call. "Choppers outbound." His chest heaved. Relief hit like a flood. "Thunderbolt, cover, keep them clear." They flew escort as the birds climbed out, tracers falling short, the valley receding behind them in fire and smoke. Only when the horizon swallowed the battlefield did allow herself to breathe. Back at base, the landing was quiet. Engines wound down, cockpits opened, pilots climbed out with sweat-soaked suits and eyes hollowed by adrenaline. No cheers, no applause, just exhaustion, and the knowledge they'd brought men home who wouldn't have survived another 10 minutes. Approached her on the tarmac, helmet under his arm. His voice was rough, stripped of arrogance. "You kept them alive, and us too." Met his eyes, waiting for the smirk that never came. Instead, he gave a sharp nod. Respect, finally earned. Martinez clapped her shoulder as they walked off. "Not many could pull that off. You did." His voice followed, low, steady. "You're not just flying anymore, you're leading." That night sat alone with her logbook. Her hand didn't shake this time as she wrote. "Pin team, outnumbered, we held, we brought them home." She paused, staring at the words, then added, "Every mission costs something. Tonight it cost pieces of us, but not their lives, not this time." She closed the logbook, exhaling into the silence. The desert wind rattled the tent walls. Distant engines roared into the night, another sortie lifting into the sky. Tomorrow another test would come. The sky always demanded more. But for the first time, didn't wonder if she belonged in it. She knew. Why did victory feel so much like loss? The rescue had been called a success. Dozens of soldiers brought back alive. Commendations whispered. But when lay awake that night, staring at the dim glow of her tent ceiling, the word success rang hollow. She saw us dive, the convoy burning, the faces of men loading onto the rescue birds, eyes wide with fear and disbelief. Every mission carved new names into her chest, and though she carried them silently, the weight grew heavier with each sortie. Command didn't pause, missions stacked, targets shifted. The war machine turned, indifferent to fatigue or grief. Orders came the next morning, clipped and cold. "Your unit's flying Overwatch for operation. High-value strike. Enemy command post dug into the mountains. This isn't convoy cover, it's a decapitation mission. Fail and the campaign stalls." Stood at attention, jaw set. "Understood, sir." But inside, a storm churned. Every mission had sharpened her instincts, tested her resolve. This one would demand all of it. She didn't know if she had enough left. The briefing laid it bare. Multiple layers of defenses, heavy anti-air, enemy fighters expected. Strike package required precision, no room for error, and she was still lead. In the ready room, the tension was a live wire. Checked his gear in silence. Martinez scribbled notes, calm as ever, adjusted his gloves, eyes narrowed in focus. When spoke, her voice was steady but her chest burned. "We fly tight. Martinez on my wing with suppression first, precision strike second. This isn't about ego or proving anything. It's about getting everyone back alive. Copy." "Copy," Martinez said. "Copy," echoed. Hesitated, then gave a sharp nod. "Copy." It wasn't defiance anymore. It was trust, hard-won, fragile but real. Engines thundered to life. The Falcons clawed into the night sky, afterburners streaking fire across the horizon. The desert dropped away, replaced by jagged mountains etched in moonlight. Thunderbolt check. 2 green. 3 green. 4 green. Her breath steadied. "Copy all, let's bring this home." The mountains rose like teeth, bristling with gunfire. Lock warning screamed, missiles streaking. The formation split, flares streaming, countermeasures flaring like fireworks. "Ridge batteries hot," barked. 2 engage left, ordered. Martinez rolled in, bombs slamming the ridge. Explosions tore rock into fire, shredded another nest, tracers clawing the sky. But then enemy fighters appeared, 3 diving hard, HUD lit red. "Bandits inbound," shouted. Blood surged. 3 take high cover, Martinez with me, engage low. The sky erupted. Jets screamed in violent spirals, missiles tearing the air. Locked 1, fired. Impact flared. 1 down. Martinez cut another, engines roaring through debris. His voice spiked. On my 6, I can't shake him. Her eyes snapped upward. His jet twisted, a hostile glued to his tail. Without thinking, she rolled hard, cutting across vectors, guns blazing. The bandit erupted in flame, pieces scattering into the dark. Clear, she called, breath ragged. His voice came back, rough but steady. Copy, thanks, lead. No smirk, no doubt, just gratitude. But the fight wasn't over. The command post loomed ahead, buried into the mountainside, bristling with defenses. This was the target. This was why they were here. Martinez, lock primary. Secondary, cover high. I'll draw fire. She banked low, HUD screaming with locks, the mountainside erupting in tracers. Her jet shook under fire, but her eyes stayed locked on the path. Martinez's bomb struck first, shockwaves ripping through bunkers. Run followed, tearing into secondary positions. But alarms shrieked, her Falcon hit. Warning lights flared across the cockpit, hydraulic failure, controls sluggish. Her heart slammed, but her voice stayed calm. Bird hit, systems compromised, continuing run. Break off, Martinez barked. Negative, I've got the shot. She fought the stick, muscles burning, HUD flickering. The reticle aligned on the command post entrance. One squeeze of the trigger, release. Impact. The mountainside erupted, fire blooming outward, command post collapsing into itself. Mission success. But her jet was dying, control slipping, altitude bleeding. Eagle-7, you're losing it, shouted. I know, she breathed. The ground rushed up. She pulled every trick, every ounce of training. But the Falcon groaned, unresponsive, gravity tearing her down. Her hand hovered over the ejection handle. One pull and she'd live. One pull and the mission would still stand. But her mind flashed with fall, with hesitation. With every face she'd led, every voice she'd promised she wouldn't fail. If she ejected here, the jet might plow into the convoy path on. If she stayed, she could drag it clear. Martinez's voice cracked through comms. Eject, that's an order. Her jaw clenched, breath shallow, the choice carved into her chest like fire. She whispered, barely audible, not this time. Her hands forced the stick, muscles screaming, dragging the crippled jet away from the convoy path. Metal shrieked. Flames tore across the fuselage. The ground rose like a wave. Impact. The world went white. When she woke, it was to silence and the ache of her own breath. Hospital lights overhead, bandages across her arms, ribs searing with every inhale. The mission. Martinez appeared in the doorway, face shadowed but eyes alive. Relief softened his voice. You made it. She tried to speak, but her throat closed. He stepped closer. The strike was clean, command post destroyed, convoy clear, no losses. He paused. You saved them, all of them. Tears burned her eyes unbidden, not from pain, from the weight finally lifting. Days later, stood at her bedside, the logbook in hand. He placed it gently on the table. For once, his voice carried no edge, only respect. Lieutenant, he said, sometimes the sky doesn't need heroes. It needs people who don't stop, even when the world tells them they should. You've proven that. She looked at the logbook, fingers trembling against its worn leather. Every page had led here. Every scar, every hour, every silence. When she finally spoke, her voice was quiet but steady. I didn't do it alone. Nodded once, no one ever does. That night walked slowly to the edge of the airfield, ribs aching, bandages tight. The desert stretched silent, stars hanging low, engines rumbling in the distance. She thought of Nevada, the laughter, the mockery, the stolen logbook. She thought of Martinez, of every voice that had doubted and every silence she had carried. The tower lights blinked red against the dark. A sortie lifted, roaring into the night. And as the comms crackled faintly on a nearby headset, she heard it, clear, calm, undeniable. Eagle-7 cleared for launch. Her chest swelled, tears catching in her throat, not from pain, from knowing. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts.